Hey guys, how's it going? Stephen here from Heresy Academy. So this is our part 2 video, and what I'm going to do in this one is show you how to make the player walk. Just left and right. I'm not going to do jump because I'm going to save jump for part 3 because I want to put in a few different elements and I don't want to confuse you with the movement and stuff like that. So for starters, if I did make the player the walk, it's just going to drop off and it'll die. Well, it won't die, it'll just keep going forever. So first of all, I'm just going to Control and D, make myself a couple of floors. Click on the W tool. Just going to drag this out. Oh, actually, maybe click on T then. No. Hold down V. Oh, do you not like doing this? Okay, never mind. I thought there'd be a decent way to do this. Never mind. Hold down W. Drag this along. Next one. Drag this along. Drag that along. See what I'm doing here now? I'm holding down Control, and it's moving it by by units, 1 unit at a time. So this floor object, it'll move by these amount of space because of how it's been set up. So what you'd want to do is carefully consider what it's going to look like. So floor 1 is at -1, and then try this at -0.4. Yeah, so -0.4 I'm happy with. Okay, so now this next piece is going to be at 0.2. Yeah, so we're moving at 0.6 because I think the pixels per unit are a bit screwy. So this one will be at 0.8 and so on, and then I'll just grab them all, duplicate, move them along. It was relatively decent, so you want to be a bit more precise when you guys set it up, but for now this serves the purpose. It doesn't have to be so perfectly aligned, because like I said, I'll probably change things later on anyway. This is just to get it set up here. So now I've got all these floor objects, and they're all objects containing children. So now I'll call this object floor, so I should have called these ground. Grab all of the, well, same error as the last one. Make sure I reset this to be at 0. Set all of these up and drag this into here. This isn't too much of a problem. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a component to the entire lot, and it's going to be a box collider 2D. And where is it going? So this backfired a bit. What I'm doing is I'm changing the offset to suit around here. Then I'm going to extend, oh, not the offset now. Change the size of the X to stretch out along here as much as we can. Just going to manually drag it now and just sort of pull it out. So I'm not too worried about the ground, like the underneath bit here, because you won't go past here, so just roughly will do. Because the colliders and the floor and the setup and this stuff, this isn't what this video is about. I just want to get this up basically as a placeholder here. I'm just going to save that, so I can teach you now how to move the player. So as you can see, the player isn't exactly a square shape, but it's a bit of a circular shape. It's a bit, it's not a defined shape. So if you add in a box collider 2D here, you'll see it goes a bit squiffy. You can change the size a bit and say you want to define it to be just that or just that. You may find it a bit better to be setting up a couple of them, so have a bit of a circle collider and a bit of a square collider, stuff like that. Me personally, I'm going to try it out now with a circle collider. Give the illusion of it being a body shape. Change the radius a bit. Change the offset on the X. Because the way I want to set this up is perhaps with a bit of shooting in it. So the only way to kill you would be to shoot you in the head, perhaps. Perhaps you can do it like that. I'm just going to keep changing the offset a bit and the offset there. But now the problem with this is as you fall, the whole of your body is going to fall, until the collider here hits the hits the bottom of the circle collider, and then you'll roll a bit around and stuff like that. So what I want to also do is set a box collider 2D. Just set that around the whole shape for now. We will change this afterwards again, but again I don't want to go into too much of the character setup. I want to just get the player moving. So what I want to do now is I'll close off these components I'm not going to change. Add another component, and it's going to be a rigid body 2D. It's going to have a gravity scale of 1, and its kinematic is going to be off. And now keep saving it all the time. Now you should see that you'll fall and you'll hit the ground when it loads. Normally it loads pretty straight away. So you see, but left and right, nothing doing. I'm not jumping. I'm not able to do anything. So what I want to do is go into Add Component. Well, and you click on New Script there, or go into your Script folder and right click and get a new C# script. And I'm going to call this player because it's not just going to be player walking. We're going to put other elements of the player into this script on later videos. So we'll just call it player. Let it load in or compile these basic pieces of information here. And of course, as usual, possibly in every single video, I forget to open MonoDevelop. So I'm going to try and open it now. It may take a few minutes as per usual. We shall see. So I want to talk to you a bit about what we're going to do. We're going to try and keep it very, very simple. We're just going to set up like a movement speed. We're going to grab the rigid body, but we're going to do it in a private way rather than public. I mean, you can do it public and just drag it in, but we'll set it in a private way. And then I'll show you how to get the component. In older versions of Unity, you used to be able to just write rigid body, and it would grab the rigid body of what the script is attached to. But now you've got to do get component rigid body, and you don't really want to do that for every single time you need to access the rigid body. So we're going to use a private, and then we're going to do private rigid body. We'll call this our player, and then we'll, in like the start function, we'll activate that get component code. And then very, very simply, I'm just going to do a left key and a right key, so you'll be able to move using that rigid body component. And that will basically conclude the video there. So to get us started then, I want to make a public float. And a float, I'm going to start re-explaining things again because it dawned on me that some people watching one video may not have seen other series. So using public means that, for one, you can access it in the inspector. It makes it a public element, so you can access it outside of your script. The float is basically decimal numbers, and integer is a whole number. So what we do next is we're going to write something here, and this is what we're going to call our variable, our public float. So the public is like an attribute, whether it's public or private. The float is what it is. So like I said, a float will be a decimal number, and the move speed here is the name. So what you can do, if you just put a semicolon, make sure you put a semicolon at the end of every line you do. It's just, you've got to get into the habit of doing it, because when I started I'd miss out loads of semicolons and I'd get a load of errors and I wouldn't know what it means. So the semicolon just basically tells Unity, or tells the script, right, I finished here, let's go on the next line. Otherwise it's going to keep trying to find more information. Now if you had more information, you could still, well, I think you can in this, you could still carry on the next line a bit and stuff like that. But it's always good to try and just keep it on one line. But yeah, so make a public float move speed, and we'll drop down and we'll write private. Now, one thing I've noticed a lot of people do is they put an underscore. Oh, sorry, actually, pardon me a second. I'm going to get our rigid body 2D first. So I'll explain what that is as we use it. It's a physics object that we put onto our player. Basically, everything physics: gravity, mass, velocity, physics, physics, physics. So for private variables and references, people often put an underscore first, and then they'll put the name. That's just their way of letting them know, like reminding themselves it's a private function, it's a private option. So I'm just telling you this because I don't do this, but if you ever look at other people's code and they've got loads of underscores around and you want to know why, it's just their way of saying, well, that's a private thing. But that's personal preference. There is nothing wrong with having an underscore or not having an underscore. Okay? So in the start function, what I want to do is get my player, that's the name of my rigid body, and it's going to be equal to get component. Now, I will go into get component again at a later video because there'll be a different way of getting the component of an object. But for now, we're just going to get component and use the more than and less than signs. And inside the get component, we want to write rigid body 2D. As you're following along now, if you put rigid body, it won't work because a rigid body is the 3D version of rigid body. Or should I say, the rigid body 2D is the 2D version of rigid body because it's Unity 3D, it's about 3D, and we're using 2D elements, 2D aspects. So make sure you get the rigid body 2D. And then with brackets, or also known as parentheses, make sure you put these. You do this because getting component is a function. So every time you call a function, make sure you put parentheses. In other videos and possibly later on in this series, I'll be showing you the point of parentheses in the sense that you can put arguments in there or put extra information, tell it this is what you need from this. So this is all you need to do in the start function. So now every time you write player here, this is your reference now. The player is the rigid body 2D of what this script is attached to. So down in the update, like I said, we're only going to do the movement for now. So we want to use an if statement. Quite literally, it is what it sounds like. You're just saying if this happens, do this. So I don't know. If you take out the trash, you get $10. Okay. So if, then what we're going to do is input dot key down, get key down. No, whoa, get key. Sorry. So what this is, input is basically, you know, getting inputs. You can get an input from your mouse, from a joystick, from a controller, from a keyboard. So we're using input.getKey, so we're clicking a key and we'll define what key it is in a minute. But I almost put get key down, and the difference between get key and get key down means get key is if you hold down a key, then that'll work under the get key, whereas get key down just means that one time you press it down, it'll do this. Whereas we want to keep moving. So you maybe understand this a bit better as we move along. So open another pair of brackets here, and inside here now, so this is kind of like giving it the argument and the extra information. What we want to do now is write key code, and then for starters we'll do the right movement. So how do we want to move right? We could do right arrow, or we could do D, but for this I'm going to use the arrow keys and the up arrow to jump. So I'm going to do that, and then underneath the if statement, open up some curly braces, curly brackets. In fact, I don't want to do that. It always formats itself. So now you can see the, it's not cursor, but the flashy line that says this is where you type in is sort of indented from the if statement. You can write it directly under, but a lot of people will write it here as if to say, yeah, it sort of makes it sort of step down. So the player is stepped down from the void. So if you just have a quick look, you can see that this is part of that, this is part of that, etc. So what do we want to do when we press the right arrow? So we're going to get our player now, and then we want to write player.velocity. This is the linear velocity of the rigid body. If you remember, the rigid body is now what we've got of our player. If you understand science, physics, maths, stuff like that, you understand what velocity is. And this is going to be equal to a new vector 2. Vector 2, imagine graphs, coordinates and stuff. A coordinate on a graph or on a map could be considered to be called a vector. Using vector 2, that's just using x and y, so that's your horizontal and vertical positions. So we want to make a new vector 2. This is now we're messing around with our x and our y. So when we click our D or our right arrow, depends how you set it up. You could set it up to be, if you click G, you'll move right. It's completely up to you. But what we want to do is we want to move on our X position, but we don't want to move on our Y position. So what we'll set up is we'll open up another pair of brackets, and we will write move speed as our X, as what we're moving on the X. And then we want to write out our Y. Now you can just put 0. and this it will move at a value of 0 on the Y, so it won't move on the Y. But that may cause you some problems later on, so we're just going to dive straight in and go for what we want to do. What we want to do is do our player.velocity.y. And the reason we want to do that, do the semicolon at the end of that, is so that afterwards, when we put in like a jump function, if we jump and we try and move, it's gonna flop around a bit, it's gonna float down, it's gonna mess up. So make sure you're basically getting the velocity that you've already got on the Y. So if you're moving on the Y, so if you're moving up and down, then that value will be given as you're moving to the right or to the left as well, sort of thing. So now what we want to do is we want to do the opposite of this, and quite literally you could use the exact same line of code and put a minus. So just to get you used to how it's written, I'm going to write it and call it out. So I'm going to do input.getKey and then get our key code. But this time I'm going to do a left arrow and then open up the curly brackets, curly braces, whatever you may call them is fine. Then you want to get your player.velocity again. This is also going to be equal to a new vector2. And this vector2, you can write move speed. So you can copy this code and then player.velocity.y. Now this isn't it. This is wrong because this is now going to do the exact same thing as moving right. So as I said, you want to do the exact opposite of this. So you just want to put minus move speed. The move speed is the public float that we declared earlier. It's public so I can change the value later. And what we want to do, you could set it up there just to be equal to 2.5 or something, you know. We're going to set it there as 0 so we can change it later. Well, change it now. So I'm going to Control S and save my script. And go back into Unity and it's going to compile in the bottom corner. Now, a few things I've noticed, because I've scoped out other tutorials on YouTube, make sure I don't copy anyone, make sure, see what other people comment, see what they want to see. And some people do have a problem with when they write a script and then they click play, nothing works. So always make sure that this is the player here. So you can probably call this now player in the inspector view. Save the scene. So on your player object, you can see that this isn't, it's got no script that we've written. So you click on add component, and if you write player, you will see the player script that you've added. So alternative to doing that, so you can remove that there. You can drag from your scripts folder underneath the add component section. Now, if you added this script to anything at all, then it will grab the rigid body of that component. If it doesn't have a rigid body, then the script won't work. So make sure the rigid body 2D, sorry I've just said rigid body, make sure it's rigid body 2D as well. And then if you click the right arrow or the left arrow, it'll move or whatever this value is. So we've added it to our player, that's correct, so we want it to work. So let's say we put our move speed, we'll put the move speed to be 2 for now. We'll change this however we want it to be later. So what you can do is you click on play. Usually it loads. It drops down, and I'm moving there, and moving there. See, the movement is not the greatest, so let's try, well, let's just try 3 and see what that's like. It's a bit quicker. Is that what we want? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. See, one thing you may notice as well, because we're using velocity, I'll just press it, but it still continues to move that tiny bit because the velocity doesn't just drop down to 0 straight away. But this is how to make the player move left and right. As you can see, it doesn't turn around, it doesn't mirror its image, it doesn't jump or anything like that. This was literally just player movement. So in the next video I'm going to tackle jumping, and if you want to put in a double jump and stuff like that, things like that I'll do in the next video. So if you like this video and you're looking forward to the next series and you want me to feel good because you like the video, click on like. If you dislike it, obviously, you can feel free to dislike it, and I might kill a kitten if you do. But subscribe to my channel so you can see the next videos. The rest of this series will be put into the playlist, so you can see it on the cards in the top here, or go to my channel and click on playlists. You will see other playlists there ready available as well. But apart from that, I will see you in the next video.